Hello, MotoRider World fans, and welcome to this episode of Talking MotoGP with myself, Rob Portman, and Paul Scott. We're going to be talking about a little bit of Portimao. Sorry we missed you all last week, but crazy times and just away doing things and stuff. But we'll have a nice show, a lot to talk about in this show. A little bit from Portimao, of course, the Valencia race weekend that's just happened, and testing that's literally just finished a couple of hours ago. So get yourselves nice and comfortable. Get yourself a nice warm. If you're in the UK, get yourself a nice warm cup of tea or coffee because it's absolutely freezing. I am in Birmingham. I've been working the Motorcycle Live show since Friday. It's freezing cold here, Paul. I don't know about your South African weather there.
Well, Rob, I'm in Cape Town, as most people know. I semigrated here 3 months ago, and for 3 days the wind has been howling. So Joburg apparently is having plenty rain, which is a byproduct of all the wind we're having here in the Cape. But yeah, the weather's been good bar the rain. I mean the wind. No rain, warm, like it gets very dry this heat in Cape Town, but the wind has certainly been howling, but definitely not cold.
Okay. Well, I'm freezing my nuts off here. I won't lie. James Thompson in pole position. See you later on. That was 10:42 a.m.
Cheapers.
UK time. So that's what 12:42.
12:40. Yes, that's proper.
David Michael Callahan, 12:51 p.m. And then Bonnie Tats, it's Yvonne Pretorius. I don't know what comes as Bonnie Tats. Now, evening, Robin, Paul, so sad. The end of an amazing season. What we're going to do for 3 and a bit months. Thank you, Rob and Paul, for giving us your time. Love the show. Thank you so much, Yvonne Pretorius, as she just says there. Wayne Taylor, good evening, gents. You really messed up the balance of my week last week. I was lost from Tuesday evening on. Hopefully tonight back on track. Yes, we are, Wayne. Sorry about last week, but a little spanner in the works there. And then everyone's already joining in, all the regulars, some new names I see here. Ashley Belden, hi guys. Ricky Brody, hi guys. The Great 481, you're going to cover testing too. Yes, the Great 481, we have testing times have just come in, so that's going to be a nice little bit of the show. Alex Fullion, good evening, guys. Looking forward to a good show. Ricky Brody, I've already said. Daryl Holmes, El Camino, Brett Lawson, James Thompson, Ollie Moto. I'm watching the test. Have a good one. Brian Ritchie, as always, joining in. So hello, everyone. Welcome. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe in the land of YouTube. Hit the share button in the land of Facebook. And just get going with that. Another little note to make, Paul, before we start is my brother did WhatsApp me. I have to make mention to the fact that Tricia Moorman, a very close person in the motorcycle world back in South Africa, a big fan. She was just part of motorcycling in South Africa, really. Unfortunately diagnosed with something very harsh a couple of months ago. So anyway, my brother organized a track day not so long ago for her to help raise money. She's got a GoFundMe page on Facebook and everything. But as part of that, and Paul, let me tell you, this is how strong the South African community is. As soon as that bad news hit, Courtney Binder, Brad Binder's beautiful wife, WhatsApped me within 5 minutes of me finding out the news and said, Rob, I've got a pair of boots from Brad. We're going to sign them, send them back to South Africa. Let's work out the logistics with your brother and that, and then please put them up for bid, and whatever money's raised, it all goes to Trish Moorman. So a big thank you, first of all, to Courtney. Beautiful, kind heart as always. Brad Binder, he's done magical, marvelous things for me personally and my daughter, and supporting everything that I've needed, and again just expanding that with Moorman family. So keep a lookout on the MotorRider World Facebook page. We've got a pair of Brad Binder CD boots, so from this year, signed by Brad himself. They'll be going up. There is kind of a reserve price because we've already got a bid on that. So keep a lookout there, and all the funds from that will go to Trish Moorman in all the medical costs that she needs to help battle this horrible disease that she's got. So big thank you again to everyone for supporting the Binder family again, and Courtney, thank you so much. So really do appreciate that. Paul, let's jump into MotoGP then quickly. Let's start off with Moto3. Riche Mudley, first season. I think looking at it overall, started off really well, managed it, the ups and downs of what a rookie season was going to be. Showed some really good pace a lot of times, big learning curves. Came back from injury, had to learn new tracks, just so much thrown at the young man this year, and I think he can be very proud of himself, him and his family, of how he held himself, how he represented himself and his team. And I think a good job in his first rookie season. And we as South African can be proud of him.
Yeah, Rob, absolutely. I concur 100%. Pity about the injury because that's always a setback. Doesn't matter who the rider is, but it's part and parcel of motorcycle racing. Besides that, I think a fantastic rookie season. As you say, learning new tracks, the life in the paddock. You've moved, no matter what formula you've been in prior to MotoGP, and as a youngster, you're moving into the big leagues. You have to be starstruck when you're walking down pit lane and Marquez, Bagnaia, whomever it is in that environment. So you've really got to mature as a person, albeit you're only 18, 19, 20 years old. I think so. So from that point, it's a massive learning curve. And next year is only going to be easier because he'll be one notch above that starstruck phase. And I think that's people don't, you forget about that. You try to downplay it. But you know what you are like. Me, I know as an 18, 19-year-old, I was racing motocross at the time. If I'd bumped into, and I know it didn't happen, but if I'd bumped into Bob Hanna or, Ricky Johnson, I would have worried more about looking at him than what I was doing. So, I understand that. So I think it's a massive learning curve, and I think he did exceptionally well. Just a pity about the injury because that always puts you on the back foot. As we heard with Darren, he broke his arm, just never recovered from that because we've discussed it time and again. You don't have time to recover. You race this weekend, maybe skip a weekend, race again, then there's back-to-backs. So, yeah, I think fantastic and well done to him and his family for the support and all the logistics about having your child racing over there. And I say child, he's a young man.
He can be proud. 14 World Championship points, 27th in what is a very cutthroat Moto 3 championship full of amazing riders and teams and everything. So, yeah, Richey Moodley, onwards and upwards. Let's keep supporting him into next year. Knows all the tracks now, knows a little bit more what to expect. Like you said, going into that championship, you got to be you surrounded in that environment with everything going on to keep your emotion in check, to keep everything in check at a young man, like you said, 18 years old or whatever he is now. It must be so hard at 18 years old. We were all doing a lot of different things and not acting the way he did. So very well done, Richey Moodley, Arushan. If you're all watching this, anyone watching this, we love you. Great job, and we'll keep supporting. Moto 2, Darren Binder. We've spoken about it. Not a great season. That arm break at Le Mans, I think it was, where his arm got caught in the back wheel of Barry Baltus, was it?
Yeah,
I can't remember who it was, but subsequently we saw that the Darren performances weren't there, and the last couple of rounds it came out that he was actually just riding with that injured arm or almost a broken arm throughout the whole season. Finally missed the last couple of rounds because he had the surgery on his arm. Disappointing way to end his career in that paddock. It doesn't look like he's got a ride in that paddock. Does look like it's either Moto America or BSB for Darren Binder. I'm sure him and his team will be looking at what the best deal will be there for Darren. But he can be proud of what he did in that championship. A couple of Moto 3 podiums, Moto 3 wins. In Moto 2, jumping straight to MotoGP, some very impressive rides in MotoGP. I was speaking to someone about it yesterday or the day before at the show, some South Africans that came to our stand at the Motorcycle Live show. And we were saying, to make that jump, I know a lot of people say, yeah, but he shouldn't have gone to Moto 2. When MotoGP presents itself, you take it, because if you look at it now, that's going to most likely be his one and only chance of going in MotoGP. He took the leap, in what was a very difficult environment. It was Razlan and a team that had no money and all the funding problems, and it was just not the right environment to go into MotoGP. Darren took the leap of faith, had some really good performances, showcased what a really good rider he is, came into Moto 2, things kind of started well, and then just an injury-plagued kind of time, plus all the Jake Dixon incident in Silverstone. It's just so much happened to Darren in that paddock, and I'm not making excuses for him. He had great opportunities and maybe should have performed better in a lot of those opportunities, of course. But there were a lot of times where he was kicked in the teeth and just battered into the ground, and it was a lot for him to take and kind of deal with. So it's a pity we're seeing him leave the championship, but in a way, I'm hoping he can go somewhere else, find a good team, find himself again, and we can see the real Darren come out and show his performances.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. And what a lot of people, I don't want to say they forget, I think they choose to forget that to race in MotoGP, regardless of, yes, and we want our South Africans to win. That's just our DNA and we back them 100%. But in each category, so Roche, Darren, and Brad, you're racing against the pinnacle of those riders in the world. They are the best 25 or 30 riders in that field. And to be mixing it up with them, whether you're coming consistently 18th, 15th, whatever sort of where Darren was, or racing at the front, you're still racing with the best of the best. So I think big ups to him. Yes, he'll be in himself. I think he'll be disappointed he didn't achieve more. Like you say, he had opportunities. Not saying he didn't grab them, just sometimes the luck wasn't on his side. And onward and upward, I think wherever he goes, he's going to be a star, and people know him, and he's come from MotoGP, so he's definitely going to have pressure, and there'll be weight on his shoulders. But I think for a guy like Darren, like everything else, he'll act like a South African. He'll just deal with it and get on with what he has to do. So wherever he ends up, all the very, very best to him.
Yeah, as soon as we get that news, we'll be the first to break it. Of course, at Motorrad World, haven't really heard anything other than what's been put out in the social media world. It definitely looks like it's BSB or Moto America. Let's hope he can get something. Alex van der Berg really wish he got a Super Sport 600 ride. If you look at the likes of Nicolo Bulliga, who filled in for Marc Marquez the last couple of rounds, and that journey that he took, leaving the MotoGP paddock and career kind of looked over, going to World Super Sport and finds himself back in MotoGP, and many other riders going that World Super Sport route and finding themselves again. Tom Booth Amos, a teammate of Darren's in Moto3 a few years ago, found himself a World Super Sport competitor, winning races, I think for top 3 in the championship with triumph. So let's see. Brian Ritchie, I hear, is off to BSB. Yeah, it's definitely between BSB and Moto America. So as soon as we get any news, hopefully we can have a chat with Darren. Obviously, it's a little bit of holiday time. Let them kind of relax and recover. Hopefully in December or January sometime we can get not only a live chat with Darren, but also the likes of Brad and Rushaim Woodley and catch up and hear from the horse's mouth the seasons that they've just had. So again, like you said, wishing him all the best, and I'm sure everyone has the same sentiments. While we're on the subject of South Africans, Paul, we're not going to dive too much into Portimao or even Valencia. There's a couple of talking points. We all know what happened, but we're going to just kind of pick apart riders and maybe their seasons, and of course talk about the testing that happened today. But finishing off with this kind of South African look and feel, Brad Binder, tricky season, 11th in the World Championship, 155 points, second KTM in the championship, but Pedro Acosta 4th in the championship, 307 points there. So it just shows you the difference there. This is a guy that's finished top 6 in the championship the last couple of years, flying the KTM flag high. Pedro Acosta's done that this year. Challenging season. And if I look at it in its entirety, Pedro Acosta made the best out of it. There's no doubting that, and we'll talk about Pedro a little bit later. KTM let their riders down this year. There's no doubt about that. Pedro Acosta got the best out of it, made the best out of it. But I look at Brad's situation, and certainly talking to him at Silverstone when I did, and there's a lot of stuff that I'll never be able to say in the public or come out in the public that was said, but judging by those conversations, it was just an uneasy season where it was just ups and downs, the financial troubles that impacted, I think, his side of the garage more than Pedro Acosta's side type thing. And, KTM were always going to have to do that. They were going to pick a direction. Pedro's was the direction, and rightfully so. He was the man, and it went that way. But that did mean there was going to be side effects to that. And that side effects, unfortunately, impacted Brad the most. And we just saw this up and down inconsistent season. Good way to finish off the season, especially with that ride in Portimao. Again, just highlighting that there's a rider there. There is a rider there that can perform if they can find something, if they can find the balance of the buck, find that something that's missing. Again, this weekend, frustrating with the qualifying. I know that's something that Brad's got to sort out himself. I read some comments that Brad came out with saying, I know Pedro likes to do this. He doesn't rely on the rear as much as I do.
Yeah.
He brakes in a different way. He's accelerating in a different way, and I have to adapt. And Brad knows that. They've changed the bike from the Brad Binder KTM that he could slide it in and do the Brad Binder things. The bike's evolved from that. It's changed to the Pedro Acosta, more direct line, the Vignales kind of thing. Bastianini has found out that, you've got to have to change your way to get the best out of this KTM. So it was a season of just this up and down for Brad. And I mean, he's not an 11th place rider. If I look in the championship, all credit to Raul Fernandez, and we'll talk to him because he does deserve a little bit of time in spotlight. The Furman Aldegears, and it's Brad's not an 11th place in the championship rider. So Phil Marin, and I don't know if you know, Paul, or anyone in the comments knows, Phil Marin's come from Top Rack to Brad. And I think today was the first day in testing with Phil Marin, with Brad. And Brad sounded really excited in the debrief, saying Phil's got some really good, exciting ideas, and I'm looking forward to trying them. And in the testing today, I mean, Brad's not much of a tester. He never kind of has been. Well, he's been a tester because he's never chased a lap time. He's always just rode around, developed, trying things, and he always looks at the bigger picture. But some positive signs already from today, with Brad in 9th place. I think it was 0.3 or 0.2 off Pedro, or 0.1 off Pedro, and 0.3 or 4 off the fastest time. So that's what I'm holding on to going into next year, is right, this refresh. Hopefully the team's more settled, the financial shit's kind of out of the way, and Brad, they can find a setting and a consistency for Brad that he can go and perform a bit better and show his true quality.
Yeah, listen, Rob, you're on the money there. I think this bike is raceable. I'm not saying it's going to beat obviously the Ducati, but specifically now I think we need to put the Aprilia as the mark that you want to aim for. But my hope is that with Phil Marin coming along, who's highly experienced, I mean, he's been in every paddock. I mean, he must be 30 years in motorcycle racing as a crew chief. I'm hoping that he sits down with Brad. Yes, today was testing, and we'll never know what actually took place. Was it aero? Was it tire setup? Was it engine management? But I hope their focus from February next year is to get Brad to do that one lap time in qualifying better. Because we've seen it. We've seen it with Paul Espargaro, and I'll use him as the example, a commentator, and I say that with all due respect. The Oak was lightning fast, nearly won a Moto2 championship years back. However, he hasn't raced for 18 months. Yeah. He shouldn't ever be finishing ahead of Brad when Brad finishes. And I know he didn't beat Brad, but he was out-qualifying Brad properly. And we've seen it. Marini said it. Everyone knows. You have to qualify in the front 2 rows. You can't be doing, and that's where we see how good Brad is. 15th to 8th, 7th, 6th. Unfortunately, on a KTM, you're never going to go 15th to 1st. Mm-hmm. So imagine if Brad was qualifying 6th, has the starts that he has, gets into 3rd, he's going to be like Pedro. Brad fights like a dog after a bone. You don't just overtake Brad Binder. So I think I'm hoping that that's going to be 60% of their focus for next year. As much as people might say, but it's only you've basically got a 15-minute, or if you don't make Q2 immediately, you've got 30 minutes of qualifying. It's the most important 30 minutes of a race weekend, no matter how you look at it, because if you qualify badly, it's impossible to win the race. So I'm hoping that's going to be their focus. Yes, they need to improve the bike. Brad needs to, as you said, and we read the article, he needs to be a little bit more like Pedro. He can do all of that. But if he can't qualify, it doesn't matter what he can do. So that, to me, I'm hoping, and I'm sure they know that. I'm sure that'll be part of their focus, just to get Brad, 2 rows further to the front is massive. And I think then we'll see Brad being back to Brad of not this year, every other year.
So Daryl Holmes, a question here. Do you think Pedro will still be at KTM next year? So much talk about a contract buyout to Ducati one team. So Daryl, I mean, the big picture there with Pedro is he's hot property. We've spoken about it a couple of times, Paul, and we've said, right, who's the guy that could challenge Marc Marquez on a Ducati? And Fabio Quartararo and Pedro came up. And I look at Fabio, definitely, speed-wise, mentality-wise over a season when things aren't going right, is where I think the failings of Fabio are, whereas Pedro, to me, is the all-round package. I think he's the strongest rider on that grid at the moment, mentally, physically, speed, everything, to challenge Marc Marquez. Ducati want him. VR46 desperately want him. Rossi wants him to stop a Marc Marquez winning from title number 10. The reality of it is not just that, but you're adopting a rider that's going to win you races in the colors of your bike. So VR46, of course, would want the the second fastest rider on the grid at the moment, or probably or the fastest, if Mark's not there. So I don't think it's going to change for next year. I say that. It wouldn't surprise me if come February 1st, there's this massive headline saying Pedro Acosta, because as I just said with the Brad conversation, KTM let their riders down this year. Pedro Acosta should not be 2 years into his MotoGP career without a win. It shouldn't happen. I feel for Pedro Acosta. This weekend, it looked like he could potentially pick up that win, a win that he deserves no more than anyone else on that grid this year. He went through a season this year of showing his loyalty. I know there was talk and stuff, but he stuck to the job. There was a little bit of uncertainty at the beginning, but the guy, as did Brad, Bastianini, maybe a little bit of question where he floated off, and Vinales was dedicated and focused on the project, but the injuries there. But one thing you can't take away from Brad and Pedro certainly is the focus, the commitment they showed to this project. And that's where I say KTM let them down. Pedro had to go through a season of lots of podiums. Great, fourth in the World Championship is amazing considering the conditions. But he also had to go through a championship where he saw Fermin Aldeguer win, Raul Fernandez win, DJ Antonio beating him. These are riders he knows that we all know that he's better of. And he had to sit there and watch and know that I didn't win a race again. 2 years into my MotoGP career, Fermin Aldeguer was 6 months into his MotoGP career and he won. 2 years and I haven't won a race. So for Pedro Acosta to keep his head, to keep his everything about him, to stay focused amongst all that, for me, Pedro Acosta has been the standout, other than Bezzecchi, which we'll talk about. I'm just, on the KTM conversation here. So Daryl, it's such a tough one because, of course, Ducati want him. Of course, VR46 want him. KTM need him. The contract's in place for next year. I can't see much changing for next year. 2027, though, I'll be very, very surprised if a Pedro Acosta is still on a KTM.
Well, in all fairness, at the end of next year, I think every single rider's contract is up for renewal. Mm-hmm. And I believe I'm going to say it's normally Mugello, which is about a third of the way into the season, the big names sign contracts. So I'm going to say I can't see it happening next year. You're quite right. There could be a shock announcement. Rossi might realize that Morbidelli is as thick as we all predicted and move him out of the way to get Pedro Acosta. I can't see it happening, but you never say never in MotoGP. So I think it's highly unlikely, but certainly if KTM don't give Pedro a bike to win as much as Bezzecchi did this year, I don't think he'll be on a KTM in 2027, no matter what they promise him. Unlike Fabio Quartararo, who obviously 18 months or 2 years ago was promised the earth by Yamaha and took that on. I don't see Pedro doing it. I think Pedro is more interested in winning world championships. Not to say that Fabio Quartararo wasn't. I just think that maybe Lynn Jarvis and whomever pulled a little bit of wool over his eyes and he bought into that. Where Pedro, I think he's too much of I desperately need to win this world championship. So if I get an opportunity to ride, certainly a Ducati, but I think by the middle of next year, lots of people are going to be chasing the Aprilia ride at the same time. If they continue in the same vein, there'll be better options for Pedro Acosta than anybody else on the grid, possibly bar Marc Marquez.
Yeah. To finish off on the KTM conversation, as Brink Heidemann says here, Brad, there were so many times this year. Yes, the result sheet says he just missed out on Q2 or he's missed out on qualifying.
Yeah.
And it was by those milliseconds and minuscule. I was, and I know a lot of people on social media are always very upset with Brad's team. The strategy seems to be weird. I've never really dived too much into that because, I've been in the paddock when things happen. And it, as Courtney said on Facebook with that one post, it's a different world in that paddock that we just don't see. It's a different environment. But I was upset in Portimao when they sent Brad out and he got one flying lap, because I think if he had a second flying lap, he would have definitely got the time. You always need that banker and then a second. So when you miss like that, then I think, okay, I mean, it was like by 5 seconds they missed it. But again, that's just a sign of a team that's been a long season. That's just when your luck's down, your luck's down. We'll talk about Pecco Bagnaia, whose luck is really down, and what he went through. But we can't forget that there were improvements in some ways with Brad. missing out by tiny amounts, and. But I think generally the picture painted this year from the outside and the information that we look at, and I saw it again. Pedro Costa's performing at Portimao with this kind of setup. Brad and the other guys have got the fins on the tail.
Yeah.
Pedro's got that, and you're like, surely if Pedro's making that work, you all have that. Why is there this inconsistency of he's riding that and that and that? Yeah, I know different riders and different feel and stuff, but there was still this inconsistency within that KTM. And the picture painted to me, and I think it kind of paints the picture of what happened with KTM this year is, right, we have X amount of budget to supply X amount of the latest 10 chassis, 10 winglets, 10 the good stuff. All 10 of them, or 7 of them, have to go to Pedro, because if you crash it, you know, another one, and then one each to the other riders. You crash it, you break it, sorry, what's on the shelf? Oh, a 2022 chassis, okay, dust it off, put it there. This was Danny Pedrosa tested this at Valencia in whatever. That's all we have. Budget, that's what allows. So I think Brad was riding a hybrid in many ways this year, where it was a combination of whatever was left on the parts shelf. And that did impact him. So that all those inconsistencies kind of plagued in this. Brad Binder, Enea Bastianini, Maverick Vinales are 3 of the best riders in MotoGP. And to be finishing in that way they did, it's just not a true reflection of the riders they are. Pedro Costa, and I'm not saying, he did get the more support, but rightfully so, because he was the foster rider and he proved himself that direction is the way to go. He's proved it with the podiums, the fastest times and everything. That's the way to go. The other guys have to now step up and change their style, as Brad said, to that. But KTM have got to get to a point next year where it's right. Everyone's got to be on the same package. I know they're all painted orange and Red Bull logos on, but I don't think. I think there was maybe a race meeting this year where they were all on the same package. Other than that, I think it was very separate. So, Phil Marin coming in, a bit more stability into next year, although there's already talk of CF Moto buying the 2 spots because KTM, Bajaj don't want it. So, I just don't want any of that. I want the season to start next year with KTM or 4 bikes, Red Bull fully backing our riders. Let's go. Because, as you said, come 2027, when the contracts are up, Brad's kind of musical chairs at the moment. Brad's in the spotlight. Brad needs to have a good season next year if he stands any chance of carrying on in MotoGP from 2027 onwards.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one thing we mentioned a couple of shows ago. I said the bad thing is I don't think he's going to have too many options out of KTM. The good thing is he might be back in 2027 because nobody really wants to be on a KTM, and his loyalty might carry him forward. But let's hope that part of the money woes, which started the beginning of the year for them, I mean, we didn't even know if KTM were going to be on the grid. So let's hope that is now behind them. Even if it is on a restricted budget, if they can start the year knowing full well they've got 22 races ahead of them and they're going to be at all the racing, I think that takes a little bit of pressure off everybody. And let's hope that they can develop a package that benefits everybody. We've said it all the time. We want to see everybody in MotoGP being competitive. And if we can highlight, Aprilia was good last year. Maverick and Aleix had moments of brilliance. But the biggest improvement this year has been Honda. They've shown that by sticking to a game plan, you can move forward. And KTM need to just find that, whatever it is, to say, okay, and maybe it is money, which is not so easy to just find. But, Honda, I don't think Honda just throw big cash at it. Yes, they've got big cash. But I think Honda this year, with the people they bought end of last year, did things meticulously, did things systematically, listened to their main, call him development rider, he's not, but Marini as their go-to guy, listened more to him and look what's happened. They really have improved. And KTM are already ahead of Honda. So now if they can find that same step forward, I think it'll be fantastic for them. So let's hold thumbs. And I'm very positive about, sometimes a change is as good as a holiday. I think this thing with Phil Marin and Brad is just going to work like rocket science, and it's really going to benefit both of them.
Perfectly summed up. As I said, hopefully we can get Brad early of next year or later this year, just for a quick, half an hour, 45-minute live chat. And we can I really want Brad to do it because we don't get to hear his side of the story. There's 2 sides of the story. And I know Brad will come on there and in a way have to be scripted. You can't go the full truth. But as Courtney has kind of defended him on social media, there's the other side of the story that we don't get to hear, the internal stuff and some of it Brad will be able to share. So I really hope we can give Brad that kind of stage time to kind of address the fans and get his kind of his side of the story out, so we can just pick it apart a little bit more, because it was a very tricky season. But as you said, I think the change with Phil Marin and everything that's going to go on, I think it's what's needed.
Rob, I think if you do get the opportunity to talk to Brad, I think you'll obviously announce it. I think what we need to do then is you need to say to people, post your questions beforehand. Let's see what most, and then like, for example, my immediate question would be to Brad, explain to us what happens going into Q1 and how you feel about it. And what is your involvement? Let him explain to us, okay, what we decide as a team is X, Y, and Z. That'll put a lot of our questions to bed. So I think if we had maybe a few questions, and my next question would obviously be WP suspension, but, maybe then you can have a more structured chat to him, as opposed to, it might work better if we can say to him, listen, Brad, you've got 10 questions you want him to answer. You can give them to him beforehand. Maybe that's how we can convince him, and then lie to him. Say, listen, we'll be half an hour and we'll take 2.5 hours.
It'll take 4.5 hours, 4 days. But that's definitely, we've spoken about it before, Paul. That's definitely the route, because you don't want, you're going to come on there and people are going to just be asking questions that we know we're not going to get the answer to or can't get the right. So I think the structured way is definitely the way to go. So I'll chat to Brad. He's going to go away with his beautiful family now on a much needed rest. So he needs to go do that, enjoy his holiday, enjoy his time off, and then hopefully we can get some time with him. Moving on, there's a very good question here from Grant Furrows 4839 on YouTube. Hi boys, isn't the 2026 season a waste of time? Now, I understand why he's asking this question, because you look at it and you go, right, development's obviously halted. Everyone's focused on 2027. Manufacturer-wise, it's pointless going and spending huge money in any kind of development because of all the changes coming in 2027. Same riders, Top Rack's exciting, and we'll talk about that. There's Diego Moreira coming in, that's exciting. So I can understand why Grant is portraying it as, is it a waste of a season? But we've just spoken about it. That card of 2027, and riders have to perform to keep themselves in. The Brad Binders, the Alex Rins in many ways, although I think his ship has already sailed. He's he's sitting very much on the fact he's got a 2-year contract. There's so many. Jack Miller. There's so many factors that still need to fall in place. So while in some ways I understand what Grant's saying, it might be boring because Mark's still going to be on one or two things, but there is the exciting side of, right, KTM have got to step it up. Pedro's looking for his first win. Brad's got to perform. Maverick Vinales has got to perform. And Bashanini's got to perform. The rookies, Top Rack. So Grant, I can understand what you're saying, but I do, MotoGP, I never think will be a waste of time. But there's some exciting stuff still to wait for next year. 2027 is still, I think, going to blow our minds, and that's going to be a complete reset, which is very exciting, but a lot still to play for in 2026.
Yeah, Rob, I think it's a very valid question, because remember, once they finish testing, engine freezes for everybody except Yamaha now. The only development they can really do throughout the year is aero, and I think they only have one change throughout the year. But you're quite right. So the racing might not be much different to what we've seen this year. But the goal for 2027 is to prove yourself. And with everyone having an opportunity to get on the best bike, which is going to be debatable middle of next year, will it be the Ducati or the Aprilia? I think that's what's going to make the racing so good. Like you say, there are a few guys, if they want to keep their rides, what we spoke about with Morbidelli, Alex Marquez and Jack Miller at the beginning of the year. And as far as I'm concerned, only one of them deserved to keep his ride this year. But anyway, there's going to be a lot to play for. But in terms of the packages, we're not going to see much difference from the bikes. But yeah, certainly. So I think it might even be a closer season in terms of times. I don't know if you saw that graphic on Instagram from Q2 this past weekend, where they showed a physical shot of the 6 riders first to sixth, and there was less than one complete bike length. That was the times covering first to sixth on the grid on for Saturday and Sunday's races. It was incredible. I think next year, because of the dynamics of engine freezes and lack of testing, can't change too much. I think the times are going to be even closer. So it's going to be everything to play for. Might be different in the races because you're still going to see the cream of the crop rising to the top, but the qualifying is going to be critical next year.
Yeah, still a lot to play for. There's no doubt about it. So looking forward to it after the testing, the little glimpse that we got today in the testing. I mean, you could pull little bits of it out, which we will do just now. It's going to be exciting. Frankie Morbidelli, you've just mentioned him there. Let's jump straight into this Frankie Morbidelli. And I don't like to really jump on riders' backs and that because, the same argument we go with Brad. There's a human being there. Criticism is always going to be there. Treat them like humans and not products. Frankie's a hard one. Frankie doesn't do himself any favors. When I saw that, I mean, I sat there, Paul, and I went, "You got to be kidding me! You've got to be joking." First of all, Alicia Spargo. I mean, out of all the riders to bump into, he bumps into Alicia Spargo, and he snapped him across the head. A couple of years. But we know Dorna, and there's got to be this frustration from Rossi's side, Dorna's side with Frankie Morbidelli. There's just got to be, because there clearly is this brain fade. There clearly is this moments where he just switches off, because that's all you can put it down to. There's nothing else you can put it down to.
100%.
And he did it again this weekend on the grid. No fault of Alicia Spargo whatsoever. Lined up in the grid like he normally did. Frankie gets it wrong and breaks his hand and misses testing. It's like, if you're a team owner, you're sitting there going, what do we do with this guy? So I don't know. We talked about riders having to showcase himself next year for 2027. Frankie Morbidelli is one of the, him, Rins and Miller are probably at the top of that list.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to that incident, he knows that every rider on the grid is going to do a little stoppy as they get into their box. And Alicia was perfectly lined up. I don't know if he maybe thought Alicia was going a row ahead of him, but that was his spot. He just has these moments where we don't know. And is it a concentration thing? Is it just now he's worried? I don't know. Was he watching to see if his whole shot device had activated, that the front had locked in for the little? I don't know what he did. And as you say, now he breaks his hand, a real avoidable thing. Certainly, just that's purely a lack of concentration. Because once you start your warm-up lap, you need to concentrate from start to finish. And he just didn't do that. You're quite right. Whether the team just think, what the hell, but they locked into the oak for another year. I think he'll get a stern dressing down for it, because, as you say, never mind the stupid crash. Now he misses today's test, which is vital. As much as people think, now they've got 3 months till they ride again. So much info is gathered today as a collective, and he's not part of that. Now he starts February, the new test, and he's like, oh, but I wanted my bike to do X, but now it's doing Y. Well, you should have been there on the test in November. So, not great. They're certainly not great. And it just seems that it's always him involved. And we say that, I know it's not always, but when silly things happen, more often than not, we're saying Frankie Morbidelli. And, come on, guy, it's not his first rodeo here. He's been around for a hell of a long time. He's a previous world champion Moto2. He knows the drill. He just needs to, because you said he just looks aloof and doesn't look like he's in it. He needs to get in it, get in the game and, buck up, boy. Come on. So, I don't know. He needs to really have an attitude adjustment.
We could talk about Frankie all day long. Paul, and everyone in the comments now, kind of an incident that happened at Valencia, but there was Portimao tied to it. So I'd love to hear everyone's kind of views on this. Portimao, Fermin Aldeguer passes Bradburn on the inside, takes his rear tailpiece, rear wing thing, doesn't get a penalty, doesn't get a long lap penalty or anything. I looked at it and I'm still on the fence with it, because I can see how it could easily be a penalty, and then I can see it as, well, it's just racing, and credit to Brad, who never made anything of it. He didn't go shouting and screaming and doing anything. It's racing. Fermin always looked, there was a gap, but I'm going to take it and whatever it is. Fast forward a week, Jack Miller passes Fermin Aldeguer into a hairpin. A little bit of contact. Jack Miller gets a long lap penalty. Now, everyone in the comments. Paul, I want to hear your side. My side is, if Jack Miller gets a penalty for that, Furman Elder gets a penalty for that all day long. It's there was not much difference in it. I don't think Jack should be getting a penalty for that in the first place. But if that's the rule and that's the guideline, then Furman should get the same. So, yeah, one of the very few times Simon Crayford has been a breath of fresh air, and I think he's sorted a lot of the problems out and he's made it a lot better. Slipped up with that in my eyes. I think made the wrong decision there.
Rob, I agree fully with you, but I'm going to now say how I think Simon saw it. The difference was that Jack knocked Furman's arm off the bike. If you have a look, his left arm comes off the bike, which means the contact, I think, was a little bit more, if the right word is violent, a little more aggressive. I think it's a racing incident. There's no doubt it was just in the heat of the moment. I think if Simon possibly analyzed it and said that could have, I mean, Furman loses grip on his left-hand side, 100%. That didn't happen with Brad and Furman. Also, in hindsight, Brad Furman, he made the decision last week at Portimao, done. You know, no decision, in fact, no penalty. Now this one, I think he looks at, he doesn't go back and say, well, what did I do last week? I think, which is good and bad, he makes a decision based on what he sees now. Because otherwise he's going to have to get footage from last week and the week before and then say, okay. So I don't know. I would say the mitigating circumstance for Jack was that Aldeguer's arm actually gets knocked off the handle, which nothing, you know, he managed to take control, ran a bit wide, off he went, aero broken, same as Brad. I think that would have been, not knowing the circumstance of his decision, I would have said that's the only difference between the two incidents. Whether he looked at that, I don't know.
Yeah, a couple of people agreeing with me. Generally, people think that Simon got it wrong this time. Aldeguer's overtake was worse than Jack's. Brian Ritchie, El Camino agrees with me. Daryl Holmes, race control and stewards were crap with that. Again, Paul, it goes back to Wayne Taylor says, I don't think the Brad incident was a penalty. I think these pathetic wings make things look worse as they fly off like Formula One wasn't too bad. And this is it. I look at the Furman and Brad in Portimao and I go, I don't see a penalty there. I do see a race incident. But then I look at the Miller one and I go, well, if you're penalizing that. So again, this is where I would love a Simon Crayford to come after Valencia and go, right. Everyone everyone has opened this can of worms that why is Jack getting a penalty and not Furman? Let me explain it from my point of view. This is what, and then break it down like you've just said. Maybe it was because Jack had contact with the rider and the rider's arm came off, which is a bit more unsafe than this and this and this. Then I would understand. But to me, from the outside and judging by everyone here, majority look at it and go, well, there's contact there with Brad and Furman.
Yeah.
No penalty. There's contact with Jack and Furman, penalty. What's the difference? And I know you're breaking it down with the arm, and in some ways I agree with you, but if that's what it is, then tell us that's what it is. You know, give clarity on it. So I just looked at it and went, it's, you know, Simon's done a great job. I love what he's done this year. He's brought a lot less controversy and a lot more consistency. Just let himself down there. And Miller came out and saying, you know, it was a pathetic decision and it was horrible. And I can understand his frustration. You know, I love Furman and I love the hard rider that he is. And a lot of his moves this year were hard and he did a couple there now. So I don't want to lose any of that. I don't want to lose that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, did Furman upset Brad's rhythm and race at Portimao? Yes, he did. So does that warrant, was there contact? Yes, there was. So does that warrant a penalty? Well, judging upon that, yes, he does. So, you know, what is the criteria of a penalty and not? Well, before that, we knew was, right, if you hit a rider off and they crash, then there's definitely a penalty. Cool. So Brad was impacted and hit at Portimao, no penalty, great. Valencia, Aldeguer was hit, but he didn't crash. Penalty. Okay, so let's see, no penalty for Frankie for running for ruining Alicia's race. Robert Swart, I mean, good point. No penalty for Frankie ruining it. Listen, it was the last race of the year. You could waive that. Whether he gets a penalty at the first race of next year, I don't know. But anyway, just I would love to see Simon, and Simon Crayford's the perfect guy to come out and explain things because he's brilliant at it. He would give us the perfect answer, and we would go, oh, okay, or still not, but clarity there again. I would like to see.
Yeah, it just seems that, and I'm not pointing this finger at Simon in any way, I think it's more Dorna. It just seems like this chief steward job is shrouded in secrecy. No one must know why you did what you did, kind of. And, it was definitely worse when Freddie was in charge, because he just, changed from week to week. Simon certainly has been way more consistent. But I agree with you. If he came out and said after the season, okay, guys, in wherever, this was my ruling for this reason, and then here it was this for this. Now the season's over. No one's going to worry about it. But like you say, give us a little bit of clarity on it so we can say, oh, okay, no, that sounds right. Yeah, okay. We agree or we disagree, but thanks for telling us. Where right now it just seems like this is, they go in their little room and they make a decision and don't tell anyone, but give him a penalty, kind of. That's the impression we get. And, as we say, this year's been way better. But it mustn't now. I'm not saying Simon would ever think, okay, I got away with that one. Let's move to next year and see what we can get away with then. Just that clarity would really be good. But it seems like it's shrouded in secrecy. There's absolutely, no one ever comes out and says why. The obvious things we know, Zarco in the race on Sunday, blatant. No one's going to question why he got a long lap penalty with Bagnaia. But when it's like you say, 1 week no, 1 week yes, just explain to us and we'll be happy. We'll move on. Might not agree, but that's why he's there to make the decision. We respect the decision and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. As Matthew Gibbons says, Simon's technical knowledge is way above all of us. So he's the man for the job, not arguing that at all. But I also think he's the perfect man to come out and give a bit more clarity to us on the outside as to why he did it. And he's the perfect man to break it down. Talking about penalties, talking about Zarco, again, everyone comments on the side. Zarco and Bagnaia, one long lap penalty. For me, I don't know what Zarco was doing. I mean, that could have ended horribly. Absolute. Oh, I don't know what Zarco was doing there. I don't know. But for me, one long lap penalty was not enough. Double long lap penalty. At least for me is what Zarco. I don't know. Yeah, again, got it wrong for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you listen to his explanation, just didn't make sense to me. He said he thought there was something wrong with Quartararo's bike, that his shot device hadn't disengaged. So he wanted to get ahead of him so that he didn't lose the pack. But he just had a Frankie Morbidelli moment and he didn't grab the brakes. I mean, if you've seen the onboard footage, when he comes past Brad, he must be going 50 k's an hour faster. Now, come on, you might outbrake someone, but when you outbrake someone, it's by, a tenth of a second. He was a second and a half behind everyone. In fact, he used Bagnaia as his braking system. So, and shame, poor Bagnaia, just, the year to forget.
Paul, before we get in or end off with the testing, let's break down the season here just by kind of, and this is for everyone. This is aimed at everyone. Let's go through. We know Marc Marquez did what Marc Marquez did, won the championship, could miss the last 4 rounds. He was that good, brilliant. You kind of expected that. You kind of knew that was coming, and he pulled it off. Most improved or surprised rider for you and everyone in the comments this year? Go.
Most improved. Yes, that's a difficult one. I'd love to say Alex Marquez, but I don't know if he's the most improved. He was the most consistent of the unexpecteds. I think, to me, the most improved was Bezzecchi. Absolutely, because he had a shock. When I say shock, he didn't have a great start to the year. But we've discussed our own feelings why. We think he got dumped in a position and it took him a while to accept the role of being the number one rider. Once he accepted that, this is my opinion, once he felt that, okay, I belong, we just saw a different Marco Bezzecchi straight away. The way he carried himself, his interviews, he never looked like he was down in the dumps. He just looked confident, even when he had bad days. So to me, I think the most improved, Alex was fantastic. Take nothing away from him. They've set a record that I don't know if it'll ever be broken, first and second. But he's on the best bike that's ever been built. Bezzecchi was on a bike that needed to improve. So what did he do? He improved the bike. And I think, to me, he's besides Marc Marquez, I think he's definitely the most improved and the rider of the year, taking Marc out of the equation. Because like you say, Marc, it was almost expected. Bez is if anyone had said to you, okay, and he only finished third in the championship, but after 6 races of this year, if someone had said to me, Bezecchi's going to finish third in the championship ahead of Bagnaia, ahead of Pedro, I would have said, you're dreaming. What MotoGP are you watching? And look what he did. That, to me, is a true champion and true commitment, 100%.
So in the comments there, Paul, I don't know if you saw it or not, but it's definitely Bez seems to have won it. Ralph Fernandez right up there and Alex Marquez. Kind of the 3 most names being mentioned there. Fermin Aldeguer's in there, Agura's in there, Brad Binder's in there. Well done, Matthew Gibbon. Love it. Brad Binder, that's brilliant. I thought about this before we came on air, and I exactly as kind of you broke it down is you could easily put Alex Marquez in there, although for me, in many ways expected, because there's always been a rider there. He's just never been able to really let it blossom type thing. Grassini gave that environment last year, and that just springboarded this year. And with that team as well, it's just a great team. So yes, Alex is a contender for it. There's no doubt about it. I still put Bezecchi at the top of that tree purely because he came in as a rider that was not going to be the number one, didn't want to be the number one in that team. Kind of came in as a little kid in the corner, the new kid in school, and okay, I'm with the champion, I'll let him do the thing. We all know what happened. We've said it before. It was thrown on his shoulders. And Alex didn't make the team or the bike better, if you know what I mean. No disrespect to him and the team, but it was a race-winning, championship contending team, as they've proven, on a race-winning, championship contending motorcycle with a great rider that finally got to show his true potential and went and did that. Brilliant. Alex Marquez, fantastic. Cannot sing your praises enough. Bez was a rider that had a very tough 2024, had a great 23, very tough 2024. In many ways, Bastianini was going to be the factory Aprilia rider because he had outperformed him. Bez had kind of just gone there. But what Bez did this year was improve as a rider, mentally, physically, and talent-wise. So he improved as a rider, and he improved a team, and he improved a bike to finish third in the World Championship and become, towards the end of the season, the biggest threat to Marc Marquez and Ducati heading into next year. And that's why I put him on top of the mantle. Ralph Fernandez, I can understand. Give him his due. He's come on. But he's come on because Bezecchi made the Aprilia a better package and bike for him to go through. Ralph Fernandez is a rider that's got the talent. Put him on a bike, a good bike that is ready to perform, and he'll go perform. He cannot make that bike the bike to perform. You know what I mean? He can't. He doesn't have the ingredients to translate it and filter it. Some riders have that trait. Some riders can climb on a bike and be fast if it's and Pecco Bagnaia showed that this year. He can climb on a bike that's fast and ready to go fast, and he can be fast. But if it's not ready to go fast, he struggles, and he needs that help to make it fast. And that's what Bezecchi did this year for the Ralph Fernandezes to go perform. Iagura started the year off well. You can't take away the input that Iagura has put into Aprilia this year. There's no doubt that information that he's brought in has helped that package. So, most improved rider and probably rider of the year for me. Like I said, Marc Marquez deserves it, rider of the year, no doubt about it for sure. But away from that, most improved rider and rider of the year for me is Bezecchi. I think he's just matured as a rider. I love everything about Bezecchi this year. The way he handled the press, the way he handled everything. He's not in VR46's shadow. He's kind of come out this year and said, I'm my own man. I make my own decisions. I was naive in many ways. I was immature in many ways, saying things and doing things in the past. I just see this man, this rider, this athlete that's just brimming with confidence and ready to be the rider that I think we all wanted him and all knew he could be, and has finally become that. And I think Valentino Rossi and his whole team can be proud of the rider and the man that they've made out of Bezecchi and Aprilia. The signing of the season, no doubt.
Without a doubt. And as you said, it was supposed to have been Bastianini's ride. He, for whatever reason, decided to go the KTM route. So I think it was a default choice, and it worked out 100% for the best. And as we've said, He got thrown in the deep end. He grabbed it with both hands. Took a little bit of time to settle down, but I agree with you. He's now, and obviously there's a team behind him, but he's created a bike that is benefiting a Raul Fernandez. Agura was better the last 3 races. Remember, he's been quite seriously injured. But for Raul Fernandez, a guy who for the first half of the year, we mentioned it many times, oh, was he even there? Suddenly he starts getting a package that works better. In a race, we see him on the podium. So yeah, definitely that's due to the work that Bezzecchi has put in. And I'm giving him all the glory for the way Aprilia has improved. I think next year, Bezzecchi, Alex, Aldeguer, Raul Fernandez, Digi, he's still my favorite non-Marc Marquez rider, but he's let me down a bit this year. He's too up and down. But you know, it's in the mix. I think next year Bagnaia is certainly going to have his hands full. He's got a horrible 3 months ahead of him. But I think the race next year to challenge Marc Marquez, it's not going to be as cut and dried as it was, as we saw after 3 or 4 races this year. I think it's really everybody's going to up their game. Like we said, there's lots on the line in terms of contracts for 2027. And I think it's just going to be, whoever asked the question earlier, is it a waste of time? Well, this is answering the question. Absolutely not. There's going to be so much at stake. And when you dig down and look, we've got 6 riders that are going to be challenging Mark week in and week out. And that's a big task, but it's certainly everyone's going to be bringing their A game come the first weekend of March next year or whenever the first race is. It's going to be fantastic.
It is. And Wayne Taylor, I love this comment and I agree with this comment. Bez was good in 23, though. Raul has been useless for 3 years, so he definitely takes it as most improved. I'll go back to what we said about Digi, or the biggest criticism I had with Digi and stuff. Raul has been good for 5 rounds. Yeah. Certainly the last 5 rounds. Raul Fernandez has just been spectacular. I think there was a dip at Phillip Island, or not Phillip Island.
He won at Phillip Island.
Yeah, sorry, it's Sepang or something where the Aprilia's battled. Bez even battled. So it's not a true reflection of Raul because the Aprilia didn't. But I want to see a little bit more from Raul. I want to see him go into next year and do this last 5 rounds, Raul, more consistently. I think Raul, the difference between the Marc Marquez's and those kind of guys and the Raul is Raul's got the talent, but there's always going to be a spike. Results. Yeah, and then there's going to be, like a Zarco. There's going to be this kind of up and down spike where a Mark is just like this, and then a little dip and kind of that kind of chart. So I love what Raul's done, and he definitely deserves to be in. If you had said to me at the beginning of the year or halfway through the year, would we be even mentioning Raul Fernandez as one of the most improved riders at the end of the season, I would have said no. So the mere fact we're mentioning him tells you that he is a very improved rider. But I think he was, again, Bez set up that platform for him, and I want to just see more from Raul. I want to see more from Raul. Can he carry this on? Can he, when times are tough and the bike's not working, make it work? Can he do it more consistently? Until I see that, I'll always still have my question marks about Raul. But yeah, hats off to him. He's done a fantastic job. Paul, I want to mention one comment here it's just so justifiable, and it's crazy. It's actually crazy if you think about it. Kevin George Kemp. So are we forgetting about Jorge Martin for next year? And it's probably the biggest talking point one of the biggest talking points. There's so many actually. What 2025 is. The champion from 2024 gave it his all. Took an independent team and won a MotoGP World Championship. Then it just had this disaster year, and it was a year that we've forgotten about the champion. There were times that Marc Marquez was a champion 4 rounds in. To me, you forgot. Geez, hang on, Jorge Martin's actually the champion. This round, this final weekend again, you kind of have to remind yourself of Jorge Martin as Kevin has just done here. We spoke earlier about he's 26, kind of a waste of a year. Well, no, because the likes of Brad have to perform, and geez, if there's any rider that's got to put himself back in the spotlight and perform, it's Jorge Martin, and show that he's not just a Ducati rider, that can only win on a Ducati. He's got to go show that, why Aprilia signed him, and that he can do the things Bez is doing on this Aprilia. So, Kevin, so glad you made the comment, because you do. Otherwise, we would have ended the show. Honestly, we would have ended the show not even mentioning Jorge Martin's name. So it is talk about big years and riders that have got to do it. Jorge Martin is is one of those in the top three.
Yeah, definitely, Rob. And the worry for him is how much has this bike changed towards Bezzecchi, which we clearly know that it has, and how different is it to what Martin's going to want? Now, what do Aprilia do? You know, if Martin starts heading left and Bezzecchi wants to go right, what are they going to do? So I think Bezzecchi, Martin's got a big problem because he can't, once again, at the first test in February, toss this bike down the road. So he's going to have to rein himself in and go with what he's given and prove that his direction, should it be different to Bezzecchi's, it might be exactly the same. We don't know, or we won't know until we're into the season. But certainly he's going to go to that test, and Marco Bezzecchi is going to arrive there middle of February as the number one rider. He might not have that on the contract, but in the garage, I think they're going to listen to him first and foremost. And Martin's going to go there with this little thing in the back of his mind, geez, I can't make a mistake. And that to me is always an issue, because then you worried all the time, and that's when you make mistakes. So I don't know, it's going to be a difficult one for Aprilia to manage. I've said it before, I felt their management last year was very weak, dealing with Maverick and Aleix. But this year it's the exact opposite. But maybe that's because they've only had to deal with one guy who I think his demeanor was, that's what I suggest, but if you can show me why we shouldn't, let's do what you guys say. And they went forward, no doubt. So next year is going to be challenging for Aprilia, presuming that Martin and Bezzecchi don't want to head in the same direction. But I think certainly Martin's starting 2026 on the back foot, and it's up to him to prove a point, which is going to be difficult. You know, he couldn't do it this year. He kept crashing every time he started getting a bit of pace going. So he's definitely going to have to watch the way he starts next year and be very circumspect about how he goes about the new season.
The thing I like about Martin and in his favor is that never say die attitude, that arrogance almost. You know, Martin's got that arrogance about him to come back next year and go, I'm going to just destroy everyone on this bike. Bezzecchi's taken my spotlight. My spotlight was taken away from me from injury, but I'm not here to be number two. I'm nowhere. Martin is not a number two rider. It's not. As you said, that's going to spur him on, but there's still the dynamic of how does that fit into the team and Bezzecchi and everything. So it's in many ways, Aprilia have got the problem that Ducati was supposed to have this year. How do you have the Marquez and the Bagnaia, you know? So that's another exciting thing to look forward to next year. Now, the next question I'm going to pose to you, Paul, and everyone, and I think it's just a very easy answer, is the most underperforming rider. Go.
Alex Rins.
Okay, so you're going to go with Rins. I mean, my mind went straight to Bagnaia, straight to Pecco Bagnaia.
Yeah.
Okay, give me your
reason. He did win 2 races, eh? Bagnaia did win 2 races.
Okay.
I think Alex Rins.
Gavin Caldenas is already agreeing with you, Rins. So let's go.
Rins, because Rob, we had 22 races. I think Rins, in terms of your mind watching the race, was absent for 20 of them. In that, not once did you, and I think even his fans would be thinking, where's Alex? You certainly never looked at the top of the time sheets. He had 1 or 2 great qualifyings where he could follow. I know at one stage he was following Mark and getting directly into Q2. But once the race took place, Rins was nowhere. And Rins is a good rider. I agree. Pecco was expected to do well. Pecco fell apart as far as I'm concerned. He just couldn't deal with the pressure. But we always spoke about Pecco Bagnaia at the races. He was always there. He had a good weekend and a bad weekend, and then 5 consecutive bad weekends. But Rins was nowhere. Different aspects of who I think didn't perform. You're quite right. As what was expected, Bagnaia definitely. But as just a factory rider, factory Yamaha, his teammate had legs on him every single second on the track. So to me, that was part of as did Bagnaia. But I just think Rins was the disappointment of the year.
So, Paul, a lot of people agreeing with you. I think Rins is probably at the top of it at the moment, with Bagnaia in second and Chantrain third. And as Wayne Taylor says, unfortunately, Brad's got to kind of be thrown into this conversation. I know we can say KTM let him down, but again,
I
the
certainly
result.
wouldn't put. Yeah, I wouldn't put Brad third. You got Jean Mir, who on a factory Honda was nowhere. He's a previous world champion. His underperforming teammate from last year smashed him this year. Zarco smashed him. Chantra, I also wouldn't put him. I know Wayne didn't put him in that list, but Chantra got the ride because of sponsorship. And just by the way, Indomitsu's pulled out for next year from LCR. But he got the ride because they need to keep that sponsor going in the East. So nothing was ever expected of him. So I don't put him as a non-performer. I think in hindsight, he actually didn't do too bad for someone who was a second-tier rider at best. But I think, and I see someone's mentioned Oliveira, not someone that I haven't rated him for a while. Jack Miller, same story. They have their moments of, I wouldn't even say glory, but definitely consistently never anywhere was Rins to me.
Paul, I'm going to expose myself here. I jumped straight to Pecco purely because I forgot about Rins, and I'll be completely honest. I honestly didn't even think about Rins until you mentioned him and everyone else commented. Yeah. But I'll jump to the Pecco argument, and I love this comment here from Zama, where he says Pecco because the others have been forever in that category. So now I think the forever in that category is a bit hard of a statement. But why I put Pecco there is because, again, like I could see Alex Rin underperforming. I could see Somket Chantra underperforming. I could see Oliveira underperforming. I did not see Pecco Bagnaia underperforming at this level. Yes, I know he picked up 2 wins and what for Pecco Bagnaia that is not enough. That is just not good enough. So I can start seeing the Rins now. Probably in the bigger picture of things, Rins for sure. But I think Rins, Pecco, and third. I mean, Brad's not in the top 3. I mean, I was just mentioning Brad there. Could throw Brad's name in the whole conversation of disappointing riders. Nowhere near the top 3 or 5 even for me, but certainly I think Somcat, Rins and Pecco would probably take the top 3 overall if you had to put names.
I think Bastianini has to be in there as well, eh? From a factory to KTM and then just nothing, So there's a few that I would put way ahead of Brad, and by no means am I saying Brad didn't have a poor season by Brad Binder's standards. He absolutely, he finished 11th in his rookie season and he finished 11th this season. So he didn't have a great year. We're fully aware of that, but certainly I think he did way better than some of the names we're mentioning. So he definitely doesn't make not even my top 5 weakest seasons of their careers.
Before we climb into the 2026 testing, I just want to answer this comment here from Tyron Berry. I'd love to know when you get onto the subject of Pecco and Mark, was it confidence or was it all Mark's info and mechanics? It's a big debate. So Tyron, I don't want to dive too much into it because we've pretty much broken it down as the season's kind of progressed, every time. It's certainly it's a case of Marc Marquez. Anyone is going to struggle to be a Marc Marquez's teammate. It's just the reality of it. Marc is that overwhelming, powerful force that just grabs. If I look at those behind the scenes videos, those Lenovo Ducati videos that they post on YouTube, and how that team was just taken by Marc, it's just those mechanics adore him. Gigi adores him. Tardozzi adores him. It's hard not to get sold from the Marc Marquez kind of thing. If I look at the last races that he's missed and how it's impacted MotoGP in a way, I'm not saying MotoGP has been completely boring without him, but it's certainly lost flavor not having Marc there. Even though Marc was dominating a lot of races and that, just not having Marc line up on the grid or be part of the race weekends, these last 4 races or whatever it was, impacted MotoGP. It did. It impacted me watching MotoGP. I still watched it and enjoyed it, but it missed something. Marc is this massive, massive personality. He's this massive brand. He is MotoGP at the moment in many ways. And Pecco had to live in that shadow. Pecco had to deal with Marc saying this about the bike, Pecco saying this, and Ducati going, well, this guy's the one pulling the results. And it's kind of the same with Pedro and Brad at KTM. If that's what the fast car's doing, that's the way we're going. It's been the argument the whole time. So yeah, I don't want to go into. We could debate about it for hours and hours now. But I think at the end of the day, Mark came in. Pecco went in with all good intentions to challenge Mark and still to be the champion that Pecco is. And he is a champion. He just had a rotten year with rotten luck, as you saw with the Zarco incident. I'm not putting all the blame on Pecco. I'm not putting all the blame on Ducati. I think there's a case for almost a 50-50 role or 60-40 role or something. Both parties need to make that work, need to improve. At the end of the day, Mark just took over that team and Pecco had to just deal with it. He couldn't. And it's going to be very interesting to see how this develops, how this plays out for next year. Is Pecco broken? Is there no return for Pecco and Ducati, as we've spoken about? Can Pecco find something? Can Pecco challenge Mark and be that challenge or that rivalry that we thought should happen this year? It's another big question for next year. But it's a tricky one, because even with the Mark, Pecco shouldn't have battled as much as he did. He should have at least been finishing top 3. Second should have been the minimum. The fact that the guys finished 5th is incomprehensible. It's just unthinkable.
Well, it just goes to show, Rob, what confidence or how much confidence plays a part in top level sport. And obviously we're talking MotoGP here, but he lost his confidence probably halfway through the year. He had realized that what Mark could do with a bike that maybe was a little bit less than perfect, he couldn't do. And that just wore him down to a point where he just didn't know what to do. And I think the bike wasn't the best. We're fully aware of that, but it certainly wasn't a 5th place bike. I think first of all, he started getting a hiding from Mark. Played on his mind. Then he couldn't beat Alex, who we've discussed this how many times. At the beginning of this year, if anyone had said Alex was going to beat Pecco in the championship, you would have said, you're smoking your socks. We wouldn't even contemplate. Maybe if you had said Frankie Morbidelli is going to beat Pecco, you'd be like, possibly, or George Martin before he got hurt, which was immediately, possibly, but Alex Marquez knows. So he had this double blow of the Marquez brothers and finishing behind them. I think it was the first 5 races. Okay, one in America because Mark crashed. But be that as it may, it just started wearing him down. And then once that psyche exploded, he couldn't recover. And we've seen it. Bulega scored more points than Pecco Bagnaia on a Sunday in 2 races than Bagnaia scored in 5. Yeah. That just is a sign of, yes, and I know exactly what happened this weekend with Zarco. Shit happens, excuse me saying that. But other than that, what were his excuses? He was crashing on his own. Yes, he got a puncture. When things are not going your way, I mean, when last did we see someone in MotoGP get a puncture? Honestly speaking, but it happens to Pecco. So if it wasn't for bad luck, the Oak would have no luck at all. So I do feel a little bit sorry for him, but I think his psyche is shot, and he's going to have to go see the cop doctor that Dovizioso went to see to sort him out, because he can't come back in February having made no changes and expecting different results. It's going to be very tough for him.
It's going to be a very interesting off season for Pecco and how he recovers from it. As I said, it's going to be one of the big, we started the conversation with, we can understand that comment of, is 2026 going to be a kind of a waste of a year. The more we've broken it down, there's actually so many factors that are going to keep it so exciting. So it can't wait. Ronald, yes, as I'll ask a question. How do you deal with a situation where the bike is not built along his direction anymore? Ronald, this is the kind of inside information that happens in the paddock that I don't think, other than a Brad or a Pecco literally having a one-on-one conversation, it's a tricky one to answer, because that's very much, that's in the paddock talk. You've got to be in that paddock to know remotely what the answer to that question is going to be. I don't know how you deal with it. I don't know how the teams actually deal with it. If Pecco wants to go this route and Mark is going this route and winning, how do Ducati handle that? Is it a case of, well, Pecco, we can't go that way because this is working. You've got to come climb on the Mark train. Same with Brad. Right,
yeah,
Brad, we're
yeah.
not. This is the direction we're going. We can't go that direction anymore. You've got to sort yourself out. So, hopefully, we do get to chat to Brad to kind of. That's one of the key questions would be to try and understand that and pull that apart. But Ronald, to be honest, it's a very hard question to kind of answer.
Yeah.
So, it would be very hard. Before we come into the 2026, end off with the 2026 testing that happened today, it's a question I actually wanted to keep for a MotoGP, and maybe I will keep it. No, I'm not going to keep it for a Moto. Maybe we need to do an online MotoGP quiz, but then everyone will just climb on their phones and that. But Paul, everyone in the comments, I don't even know the answer to it, and I'm not going to even Google it. When was the last time KTM won a Sunday MotoGP race?
I'm going to guess, would it not have been Miguel Oliveira at Sachsenring? That's
So which
my
was
guess.
2023.
Yeah, I'm going to say maybe even 2022, eh?
Okay, before I climb onto Google and look, I haven't looked. Jeez, I was gonna say Miguel Oliveira, Indonesia in the rain, but yeah, I forgot about Sachsenring.
I'm almost convinced it's Oliveira.
Okay, Brian. I mean, David House has got the perfect answer a long time ago. 3 years ago, Ron Farrows, 3 years ago, Brent Strat 2022, Wayne Taylor 2022 Indonesia. That I honestly thought it was that, but
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure Sachsenring was. Did he win? Did he win that Sachsenring? Kevin Free 2023. Brad, Czech Republic, Alex van der Berg. No, they did win after that. Brad did win after that. That would have been Brad.
He won in Austria.
Yeah, Red Bull Ring.
Brad. Yeah. That's a very good question, eh? But I think 2023.
Okay, let's Google. Yeah, let's Google. When? Oh, how do I ask the question? Yeah. When last did KTM win a MotoGP Sunday race? Question mark. Google says, AI says, Miguel Oliveira at the 2022 Thai Grand Prix.
Okay.
I said Thai, Indonesia, Thai.
You said Indonesia. Yeah, it's next door. It's close enough. 2022.
2022.
Yes, I thought they won in 23.
Tulani, Catalunya 2022. Brian Ritchie, Mandalika, KTM hasn't won at Sachsenring. Wayne Taylor, okay. No, man. Miguel Oliveira did win at Sachsenring, didn't he? Or did he challenge Marc Marquez?
I can't remember. I remember that I thought he won. But anyway, because he won. How many did he win? 5, Oliveira.
Yeah, 5. Yeah. Brad won 2 sprints in 2023. Kevin Kemp, thanks for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's your answer. 2022 Thai Grand Prix. While Brad Binder secured KTM's historic first ever MotoGP win at the Czech Grand Prix in 2020, and the manufacturer has had multiple podium finishes and sprint race win victories since, their most recent Sunday race win was by Miguel Oliveira. KTM has not won a Sunday Grand Prix since 2022.
Ouch.
God, Jesus, and that's cost them 100 gazillion.
Well, listen, Yamaha must be in a very similar position.
Okay, answers on a postcard. When last did Yamaha?
Because remember when Quartararo's bike broke at, was it Silverstone this year, when the whole shot device broke and he was way ahead. He should have won. But I'm sure they also said 2022. Yamaha haven't won since then.
Okay, let's see, Paulie. When last did Yamaha win a MotoGP race? The 2025 German Grand Prix at Sachsenring marks 3 years since Yamaha last MotoGP victory, achieved by Fabio Quartararo at the same circuit in 2022. Yeah. Sachsenring 2022. What's the prize? Yeah. What's the prize, Rob?
You can donate to a pair of boots.
You can go on the Motor Rider World Facebook page and put your donation into a pair of signed Brad boots. The prize is you get to join Talking MotoGP with Paul and Rob. That's your prize. Paulie, let's jump into. Thank you everyone for. I like it. I do think we need to throw a quiz question in every time.
Curveball every now and again.
We've got 3 months off. We can think of a MotoGP quiz and do a live MotoGP quiz and just trust that no one will go into Google. Let's think about it. 2026 testing, Valencia testing today. The morning started off typical Valencia fashion. The testing the last couple of years has been rain, and you think, oh, for God's sake. Luckily, it dried up and we got a bit of testing. Raul Fernandez, so was it Renal?
No,
Talking
Wayne
about
Taylor.
Yeah, but it was also Renal saying we need to
Yeah.
hype. Yeah, I know. No, I've lost the comment. It's going back too far. Sorry, Renal. But Renal did mention Raul Fernandez. We've got to give him his credit because he was top of the timesheets today. Again, so yes, he was top of the timesheets, 29.3, the fastest rider, ahead of Marco Bezzecchi in second with a 29.4. So both Aprilia. I mean, Aprilia did. I was surprised. Well, Aprilia threw away the sprint win because they chose the wrong tire. The conditions kind of dropped and they went with the soft tire and kind of handed the win to Alex Marquez in many ways. But certainly Aprilia performing second half of the season and certainly at Valencia. Alex Marquez in third, leading Ducati. Firmin Aldeguer in fourth. I mean, that Cressini team is slowly becoming the factory Ducati team with their performances. There's no doubt about it. Pedro Costa in fifth. Maverick Vinales in sixth. That great to see there coming back from his injury. It's a really good performance there from Maverick Vinales. Fabio Di Gianantonio in seventh. Nicolo Bulliga in eighth place, ahead of Pecco Bagnaia. That's really impressive from Bulliga. And listen, I know it's testing, and I know the times low 29s. They qualified, I think, at mid 28s. So the times were still decent. Listen, you've got to take your head off to Bulliga, who was, as I said, ahead of Bagnaia in 10th, Brad in 9th, which I think is pretty good considering the new crew chief there. So Bagnaia disappointing in 10th, Bulliga good in 8th, and the next probably talking point, I agree, in 11th, Mir in 12th, Zarco 13th, Marini in 14th, Quartararo in 15th, first time out on the V4. That's not good. I mean, he's already come out saying, if I don't climb on that bike and fast straight away, we need to have words. Well, you're not fast straight away, so you're going to have words. Martin in 16th, Bastianini 17th, Toprak Razgatlioglu in 18th, 30.6, 1.2 off the fastest. And then the next, he's ahead of Rins, ahead of Miller, first time out on the V4s for them. And then Diego Morero, the rookie on the LCR Honda in 21st, 1.8 seconds off. And then Celestino Vietti, who got Frankie Morbidelli's spot in the VR46 team. He was in last, 22nd place, 3.1 seconds off. So a little bit to pick out there. Like, as I said, the talking points really there are probably Bagnaia suffering again, Fabio Quartararo not doing anything special on the V4 for the first time, and Toprak 1.2 seconds off first time out. That's not bad because, as I was saying to you before we went on live on air, Paul, is Toprak hasn't seen Valencia. And Wayne, or someone can answer the question here for me. Paul said World Superbikes did ride Valencia this year. I think they did. It was a very long time ago. But at the same time, I can't remember World Superbikes racing at Valencia. But anyway, Toprak hasn't seen Valencia in, let's say, a couple of months, at least. While all of the riders here have just raced Valencia. So to climb on that bike in 1.2 seconds off, and what I was most excited about, Paul, is how comfortable he looked on that bike already. There's going to be more to come, but I saw a rider that was already comfortable on a MotoGP bike. So, yeah, very, very, very impressed with Toprak's first outing.
Yeah, definitely, Rob. And I mentioned it to you before we came on air. Generally, the rookies are between 1.6 and 2 seconds off on today's test. It's a one-day test. They've got bike fitting to do. They don't climb on a bike that is theirs. They've got to make it theirs. So I think for Toprak to be that close, and as we mentioned, he's ahead of 2 other Yamaha riders. That to me is a good sign for Yamaha, not a great sign for Jack and Alex Rins, but I think it was almost to be expected. Quartararo may be a little bit disappointing. I know there's big talk going around that Yamaha aren't running. They were supposed to run it at full power today. They haven't been doing so with Augusto Fernandez. Whether they did or didn't, we'll have to wait probably tomorrow or later in the week when the press debriefs have all come out to hear what the actual story is. But if they were running it at full power, and this is what it's done, Quartararo is not going to be a happy camper. I think he was hoping for a bike that would consistently put him top 3, top 4. He puts in those laps in qualifying to, what did he have, 5 pole positions this year. You can just see how hard he rides. And that's why he crashes quite frequently, because you can't ride that hard for 27 laps on a Sunday. There is a point where it's going to go pear-shaped. Now, if he gets something that means that he can ride 0.2 of a second easier, he's still going to do the same times, but it'll feel like he's riding easier. He's a dangerous man. He certainly is, absolutely. But if he's on a bike that is the same as what he's been on the whole year and he has to override it, it's going to bring him the same result. So it's going to be interesting to see when, as I say, when all the debriefs are publicized, to read what he says and what Yamaha say. But certainly, I think Toprak was super impressive.
As Wayne Taylor says, yeah, Fabio's fastest time today was on the inline 4, not even the V4, which is Yamaha's biggest thing to do for next season is, if this testing doesn't go well on the V4 for Fabio, which already is not off to a great start, is keeping Fabio motivated for a whole year. Because I can quite easily see Fabio switching off from round 2 going, right, that's it. I've checked out. I'm just going to ride around and look to 2027 and look for a contract there. And once the rider's mind has switched off and moved on, it's no coming back. So that's going to be Yamaha's biggest challenge for me. Robert Swart, yes, Toprak did test at Jerez the other day, the V4 for the first time. Yeah. My point there was he's come to Valencia where everyone's just done 3 days of riding, and he's racing, 1 point racing, and he's won in all kinds of conditions, having 250. Toprak did 50 laps today. The other riders have had 300 laps, let's call it, or 400 laps over a race weekend to do whatever they want, and he's 1.2 seconds off. For me, that's really good. Nicola Bullinger also deserves a pat on the shoulder, because I think today was a chance for him to maybe not think so much about the racing and, just being more comfortable and just going for a fast time and doing things his own way. So, yeah, I'm very, very, very impressed with Bullinger and Toprak in that. Moreira, I was also impressed with, to climb on a MotoGP bike and be under 2 seconds already, to show you, because Vietti is also a Moto2 rider and he was 3 seconds. Yeah. Really impressive. Yeah. Another very exciting to have Moreira and Toprak in next year. It's going to be very exciting. Aprilia couldn't have asked for a better way to end the season. Did it at the race weekend, did it in the test, surely looking like the biggest contenders to Ducati next year, which leads me to this, to end the show off on Robert Coots, 2026 predictions. Right, everybody go. I'm going to start with you, Paulie. Top 3 in the championship for next year.
Can everybody see? He will be back. Don't forget. Top 3. Yes, that's a difficult one. I'm going to go Mark, Bezzecchi, Alex.
Okay, Mark, Bezzecchi, Alex. Let's try and make a mental note of that come November 2026, and we can come back and say, right, Paul, either you were right, or Paul, you have been fired from the show. You were horribly wrong.
No, either all.
Okay, everyone, quickly get in your predictions for top 3 for 2026 there. Rob, I have a question. The Wayne Taylor. Rob, I have a question for you as an ex-racer. I'm reading it there. Do you forget how to be a fast rider eventually? If you get stuck on a slow bike for years, for example, surely you lose that sense of being fast. Wayne, it is yes. If you had to, if it's a yes or no, yes, you do. And I think that's what was Mark's biggest fear on that Honda, was getting trapped in not knowing how to go fast anymore, or not having the ability to go fast anymore. So the simple answer to that for me is yes. I could be horribly wrong. It's personal opinion, but yes. And I think that is what Mark did this year by jumping ship and going to a competitive bike, woke Fabio up, maybe even a Brad up, another guy, Pedro Acosta up, going, right, you've got to be on the package. Talent, and we've said it before, whereas it used to be 80% rider, 20% bike. You could override, you could take a underperforming bike and still win. You can't do that anymore. It's just not going to happen. So machine means more than anything now, but certainly you get pounded in the ground and you're just riding this bike that you're on the limits of, that becomes your limit in a way, because you've been doing it for so long. And I certainly found that I got to a point where that was my limit, because of the bike in many ways. Other riders, Matthew shares some teammates that I had, were able to push it further than that, but I got to a point where that was my limit because of the bike's limitations. So I understand what you're saying, and I hope I've answered that in the right way, but the simple answer for me is yes.
I don't know if I agree. So take a guy like Alex Marquez. He's been slow in MotoGP terms, except for this year. So now they put him on a bike that can go fast, and he could up his pace. Bezeki, same story. 2023 was a good year. 2024 was a slow year. Jumps on a bike that's competitive this year. So it's a very good question. I think at this level, given the right equipment, all these guys can go fast. I think it's more than just that. Is it the equipment? I think it's to do with your mindset. When you're comfortable, when you're confident, when it seems like all the stars are aligning, which has to happen 3 days in a row, every second weekend, basically. These guys have the ability to go faster, not just Marc Marquez. Examples are Marc, Alex, Bezeki, Ralph Fernandez at the end of the year. So if they couldn't go faster, they were limited by their bikes. Why, when changes were made, like Alex going the year before on a Grassini bike with his brother as a teammate, he was mediocre. This year, same team, different bike, he improved. So I think it's a fantastic question. I think it's a very personal answer that Rob Portman reached his limit, but Alex Marquez didn't until he got the equipment so the equipment is the limiting factor, but when you get better equipment, you can move the limit. So I don't know. It's a fantastic question, and it's almost something that only Rob can answer for Rob, or only Paul for Paul, or only Alex for Alex, if that makes sense.
I was just going to say, I think you've rounded it off there perfectly, because I think the two key words there for me is ability and mentality. I reached, I think, my ability peak and my mentality peak to not be able to go further or improve or whatever. Whereas a Shez or some of my other teammates had the ability, the mentality, the arrogance in some ways to go further. And Alex found his ability to go further this year, and his mentality. I didn't have that. That's why I was the rider that I was, and I reached the level that I did, because I didn't have the mentality or the ability to go further. So I think you've summed it up. Wayne, listen to Paul. Don't listen to Rob. That's
the couch potato.
So David Hawes, Marc Marquez, Alex, Brad. Love it when I see a Brad. Yaku Das, Marc Marquez, Bez, Aldeguer. Grant Ferros, Marc, Bez, Pedro. Michael White, former South African Superbike champion, a very fast rider. Bez, Marc, Bez, Marc, Alex. Okay,
that's a big one.
Marc, Pedro, Bez. Michael Green, Marc, Bez, not Alex. Kevin Furey, Marc, Bez, Alex. Top 3, Alex Folyun, Bez, and Pedro. Oh, sorry, Marc, Bez, Pedro. Gavin, Marc, Bez, Pedro. Marc, Bez, Pedro. El Camino, Marc's next 3 years champion, Bez second, Pedro third. Sean and Ronnie, good. Sean and Ronnie, hope you're both doing well. Marc, Jorge, Bez. Robert
That's
Coots,
interesting.
Robert Coots. I don't know if you're allowed back on the show, Robert. Marc won't win again. Paul, I'm sorry you have to hear this. Marc won't win again. Top Rack will be the highest placed Yamaha. Aprilia will win more often. Best firm in Marc. Okay, we need to make mental notes of this. So come next year, November, we can kind of backtrack to these and go, right, Paul, you were useless. Rob, you were the greatest invention ever.
I'll be shocked if Rob Coots is the winner. Hey? What a season we'll have if that works out.
I agree with you there. Marc, Bez, and Pecco. Nice, James Thompson. Good. Pecco. Come on, Pecco. Robert Swan, Marc, Bez, Pedro. Ricky Brody, Bez, Marc, Alex. Bez, Marc, Diego, Carlo Williams. Oh, DG, I thought you said Diego. I was like, geez, Carlo.
DG's my boy. I wish, but I can't see that happening.
There we go. So it definitely seems like Marc, Bez, and Pedro, which I would put some money down on that. But I think either way we look at it, we're in for we've just broken it down. I agreed fully with that question early on about 2026. I was also kind of 2026. Now that we've broken it down, I'm going, geez, when can 2026 start? There's so much that we need to happen here. So I'm more excited than ever. So thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone, for now, just
Absolutely.
making it so exciting. Can't wait. Andre Valman, thanks for hosting an amazing show this season. Wishing you all a well-deserved break and looking forward to an awesome 2026. Andre, thank you so much. And a big thank you to you all for all the support. Rob and Paul, thanks so much for your time and dedication this year. It's been awesome. And if we don't chat before Christmas, a blessed Christmas to you and all watching. Stay safe and enjoy the family. I think same sentiments to every one of you. It's been a fantastic year. I can't believe it's over. I cannot believe MotoGP 2025 is over. 2026 is looking fantastic. From myself to each and every one of you, thank you so much. I'm brewing with the idea of a MotoGP quiz just to keep us entertained. If it doesn't happen before Christmas, certainly early part of next year, I'm going to do my best to beg and grovel Brad, Darren, and Riche to have one-on-one chats with them. I think it'll be absolutely brilliant. So I'll do my best. And Paulie, again, thank you, my friend. You always make yourself available. I don't pay you 1 cent. In fact, you've got to put money in my account to be on this show. And I just thank you from the bottom of my heart. In pounds. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking the time out and joining me and each and every single person. It's just fantastic. I was exhausted, did not want to do this before coming on air. I'll be truthful. I've been standing talking about electric motorcycles the whole day, fighting with people. I didn't have the energy for this, but then as soon as I get going, I don't want to stop. So just thank you to each and every one of you. And Paulie, just thank you so much.
Yeah, Rob, thank you to you for hosting me. It's really been an absolute pleasure. And like you say, every now and again, you're like, oh, do I feel like it? But I can't believe it's an hour and a half. We've got another 5 hours of stuff to talk about. I just want to say a shout out to a mate of mine. He always watches. He never says a word. His name's Kevin Hodgkiss. Kevin, keep watching and we'll keep talking garbage. And hopefully some of what we say makes sense to you because he's very analytical. But it's really good to know that we've got lots of people supporting us, even if they don't say anything. But Rob, I can't believe 22 races, we're done and dusted. Cannot wait, as we've discussed now. Next year is going to be an absolute cracker once again.
Can't wait for it. And everyone, again, thank you. Please have a safe and healthy festive season, whatever you're doing, wherever you're going. Please just be safe. And wishing you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And just please be healthy and safe. There's so much happening out there. Please be healthy and safe. So again, for the last time for talking MotoGP races, this will be us signing out for the year. But stay tuned to Motor Rider World. We've got the Brad Binder signed boots going up. Please get involved with that. Own something that's straight from Brad, off Brad's feet. It's to a great cause for Tricia Millman. And keep a lookout on the Motor Rider World Facebook page, and maybe we can get this MotoGP quiz and the chats with the riders. We'll do whatever we can to keep you entertained over the next couple of months. But yeah, signing off for the last time for 2025. Again, thank you and goodbye.
Cheers, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Cheers, Rob.